Verse 53, sort of skipping way down into this conversation, this kind of summarizes Jesus' point. Verse 53, it says, so Jesus said to them, imagine that. It says, just like I told you, I didn't mind. And it says, truly, truly, it's Jesus, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. All right. It's a little weird, a little uncomfortable. I'm not huge into eating people. Just going to put that out there. And so Jesus is like, if you eat my body, you drink my blood, things are going to be okay. And, I was thinking about it. If we go back 5 months, my first day here, I walked into the youth portable to speak, and we got all together, and I said, hey, you know what? It's going to be okay. If you eat my flesh and drink my blood, everything will be fine. And we'll get through this transition. We wouldn't have youth group. That's what would happen. You guys would be like, I'm out of here. This guy's a weirdo. And so, jokes on you, I'm a weirdo. But anyways, so what we get is this weird, Jesus is like, yeah, go ahead and eat my body, drink my blood. And you're like, okay, I'm a little concerned. It's okay to be concerned. I'm a little concerned as well. Before we judge the guy, let's keep reading and see if it gets a little less weird. And he says here, whoever feeds on my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day. As if last time wasn't weird enough, he decides to say it again, just opposite. This time, instead of going, if you don't do this, you won't get this. Now he's saying, if you do this, you'll get this. Okay? It says, I will raise him up on the last day. Let's keep reading. It says in verse 55, for my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Whoever feeds on my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father. So whoever feeds on me, he will also live because of me. All right, we're going to hold off there. Let's dive into that a little bit. Let's answer that. Put it to rest. So Jesus isn't a weirdo. We can know that. Jesus likes to use metaphors. He uses metaphors and stories all the time, which is pretty cool. Some of the time he uses stories about families and things we can relate to, and things that are totally takeable and understandable and relatable. And then sometimes he uses other stories that, things we can't experience, but it's still an earthly, something we might be able to comprehend with a heavenly meaning. That's what a parable is. And so here we are, and Jesus is going, you know what? Eat my body, drink my blood, and everything's going to be okay. You'll have eternal life. And that's exactly what he's talking about. What he's talking about is folks that he come to him for a physical need, they were supplied. He supplied them a physical need. And they keep coming for a physical need. He says, you know what? I want to satisfy you eternally. I'm more interested in satisfying you eternally. And so what we see here is Jesus talks about this and he goes, what I'm asking you to do is devote yourself to me. I'm asking you to get to know me. For you guys, I'm asking you to read my word. I'm asking you to pray. I'm asking you to love, study, trust me as Jesus. That's what he says in this passage, don't believe me. He says it right here. If you go back, he says, whoever feeds on my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, right? So you trust him, you get eternal life. That's what we've been talking about. So as we look, he talks about getting to know him, trusting him, loving him, receiving eternal life and salvation. Good news is, most of you who've been here, we've spent the last 7 weeks talking about that, so we're kind of familiar with that topic. And so what we've got is now Jesus is telling us, hey, in a very weird way, I want you to give up everything you've got. I want you to trust me with everything you've got. I want you to love me with everything you've got. I want you to listen to my weird stories and trust who I am and invest yourself in me, and we'll move forward. And I like the response. I think the response is pretty honest, because they're kind of used to this. Jesus has already told them, another passage he talks about hating everybody else and compared to the love of Christ. And he talks about all sorts of different ways to get to know and love who Jesus is. And so giving up is a constant theme, but getting more is also the constant theme. And what we see here in verse 60 now, when many of his disciples, not the 12, but many of the people that were following him, heard it, they said, this is a hard saying. Who can listen to it? Fair enough. They're like, this is kind of rough. You want me to follow you with everything. It's kind of rough. And here's my example. This last 2 weeks, I've been kind of following a Facebook debate, which is awesome. The best place to have very scholarly debates is Facebook. And that's that's where all great decisions are made. And so, in case you're wondering, that's where I make my great decisions. I was not part of the debate. I don't think you should debate on Facebook. Not a very good place to do that. Nothing ever really gets accomplished, especially on the topic of gay marriage and those things, which is what this topic was on. And so as I was reading this, I was really kind of sad. It was a student that I've worked with before. And at the end of the feed, after she commented, she's like, okay, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but if what I believe is wrong, then I choose to be wrong. I'm somebody who professes to be a Christian. I love the Bible. I love Jesus. I want the salvation part. But if the other parts, if I'm wrong, well, then I choose to be wrong. I was thinking about that, and I was like, that is a scary statement. That you would choose to be wrong in front of God. Not like, oh, Jake, I don't agree with the fact that you're wearing a purple shirt. Like, okay, that's fine. But instead you're choosing to be wrong on God's level. You're going, nah, God, I really don't like what you've got, so I'm going to do my own thing. And that's where this kind of came in. And what we see here is it's a hard saying, who can listen to it? And so what's coming up now is I think where we're headed is awesome. I've been in conversation with Rob, and I know what his plans are. I kind of know where we're going short term. I know some of the long term things, and I think we've got a lot of really cool things coming. What's rough is, for us, to go, you know what? I like the way things are going right now. I like the way things are going right now. And you know what? I like having dinner every now and again. I like good worship. I like Jake. I like the